person with a brain and a beating heart.
Yes, sir.
Did Jeffrey Epstein hang himself or did somebody kill him?
Senator, I believe he hung himself in a cell in the Metropolitan Detention Center.
Are you going to release all the information about that?
Senator, we are working through that right now with the Department of Justice.
When do you think you'll have it done, Kash?
I think in the near future, sir.
Kash Patel, the new FBI director. I want to ask Shermichael some things about the FBI and how he feels about it.
This is 3,000 cases against violent
well, that's not my question. We know that you...
Well, you asked if I was weaponizing the FBI, and I am not. I'm giving you the hard, concrete examples of the men and women putting handcuffs on bad people, doing harm to our children and innocent Americans. I do not see weaponization.
You have placed on leave FBI employees responsible for the investigation of January 6th. That sounds political to me.
I have not placed anyone on leave who has not violated their ethical obligation or their oath to the Constitution.
So if they were investigating January 6th, you believe they were violating an ethical obligation?
Nope. I think the common theme here is you putting words in my mouth, and I'm not going to tolerate it, nor will the men and women of the FBI.
Well, you did place on leave an analyst responsible for investigating Russia's meddling in the 2016 election. Is that politicization? Is that retribution?
No, not if she broke the law or the ethical guidelines. I don't know which case you're talking about, but that's the standard. And we will hold ourselves inwardly accountable. And
it's just with him, with Kash Patel, man, it seems like he's going to be it seems like he has different ethics, the way that he looks at the way that the FBI moves. And I know some Black Americans who are conscious, they still remember an FBI that did some things that were notoriously bad to the Black community. So why do you support Kash Patel? And do you think that it's going to be a new day in the FBI?
I mean, I hope it's a day that returns some level of transparency. I think that's important. I think no one can deny that the FBI needs to be radically reformed. And you talked about, I was just making a list of things that I could just remember. Let's talk about the FBI and looking into investigating illegally wiretapping Dr. King. The same thing with Malcolm X. Yeah. Look at what they did to the Black Panthers. They even wiretapped Aretha Franklin, believe it or not. Now, some people may say, well, all right, Shermichael, that happened 40 years, 50 years ago. I don't know what people's thoughts are on the BLM movement. I have my views on it. I support the idea, but I don't think the way it was actualized in terms of an operation, I think people just did a lot of really crappy shit with the money that was raised, and that was really screwed up to me. I think it was less about trying to improve the conditions of Black people and more about filling the pockets of a certain number of Black people, but that's a different conversation. With that said, the FBI recently, and this is just a couple years ago, we're talking about modern, we're even looking into different activists at the local level who were engaged with BLM activities. And so this idea from the senator, they're like, oh, well, you guys are trying to defend January 6th. Look, I'm not a fan of what happened on January 6th at all. That shit was not okay, man. But to pretend that the FBI hasn't been weaponized against people in the country, whether it was 40, 50 years ago or just a few years ago, it's like, where the hell were you at? Were you like sleeping under a bridge? Right. Were you in a coma for the past 5-6 decades? Of course, they have a history of weaponizing their powers against certain vulnerable people or political opponents that they did not like. In our case, it happened to be vulnerable and political in cases of Dr. King, Malcolm X, and BLM, and also the Black Panthers. But you got to reform this thing, man. Like I'm personally very skeptical, Tim, of any federal agency. I'm very skeptical of prosecutors. Like I think federal prosecutors, local prosecutors have way too much discretion, way too much power. I think they overcharge people, and they typically overcharge vulnerable people because you don't have enough money to really fight them and their unlimited flow of cash to put your ass behind bail. So oftentimes you get a defense attorney that you don't have to pay for, who's just trying to strike a deal because he or she is overburdened with the number of cases that they have. So I have a real critique about our justice system in general. It hasn't worked, doesn't really work unless you're rich and powerful. And even if you're rich and powerful of color, that's going to get you you'll get a little bit of leeway, but even that has its limitations. And so I support Kash because I personally support the idea of taking a wrecking ball to reforming the FBI, Because in my opinion, while the FBI has done some good things in terms of preventing domestic terrorist attacks, they work with the Secret Service in terms of money laundering and trying to get, gangs out of here and fentanyl, et cetera. There are some good things. I'm not going to deny that. But there is a corruption and a stench of corruption that has lingered for a long time that nobody can deny. And so anytime someone's going to go in and say, hey, we're going to shake this whole thing up, doesn't mean I got to agree with everything they're going to do or everything they advocate for. But if they're going to do that, that to me is a step in the right direction, because I just don't trust any of these federal agencies. And I don't think anybody in our community really should. And maybe that's a radical of opinion, but that's the way I feel about it. And I've said this on CNN many times to the dismay of a lot of my Democratic friends. Even when Kash was appointed, I remember being on, I'm not going to say the host, but I remember being on the show and the host really pushed back against me on this. And I said, well, I said, it's easy for you to say that, but the history of your perspective is not the history of my perspective.
Right.
And so if anybody says that they're going to take a wrecking ball to reform this place, I'm absolutely going to support that, because all the people who said that they were going to have these glorious reforms, if that were true, then why just a couple of years ago they were investigating local advocates who were BLM folks just trying to organize?
Right.
Come on, man.
Yeah, and you know what? It's not
adding up there. So yeah, so that's why I support him, Tim. And again, people may dislike it, but you sometimes you have to radically reform something to make it better. Sometimes you have to make it clear to people who have been so used to holding power and doing whatever they want, like, to anybody, particularly people with no power. If somebody's going to go and shake that up, then I'm cool with that. Now, I will say this: there's a caveat that I have. Now, just because I support them shaking it up doesn't mean I support them getting into power and then usurping that same power against us either. So I want you to shake it up and I want you to have reforms, but I don't want you to go and do the same thing that the other people were doing. And I want to be clear about that. Yeah,
I agree with that too. Kash Patel, and that goes for a lot of Trump's appointments, man. Like, I'm for shaking it up, man. Things could be better. They got to be better. And if you got to have people that want to be radically make some changes. You can't keep doing the same exact thing that we've been doing. And when it comes to the FBI, it's not just BLM. It was also Standing Rock. I was an advocate for Standing Rock back with No Dapple. Mm-hmm. And they did the same thing there. There was a lot of stuff going on with that, where searches and seizures, political labeling, data-driven threat assessments, informant manipulation, entrapments. They always implanting somebody at events, and you thinking, and some of that, I know that Senator wasn't talking about it, but there was a lot of that going on January 6th too. Like people that
of course she wasn't talking about it. Of course she wasn't talking about it, because obviously her political focus is on January 6th, and I understand why, but my point is, let's not be hypocrites here. Let's not pretend that this is a serendipitous moment in terms of the FBI utilizing their powers in ways that a lot of people would probably say is rather abhorrent. But people certainly conveniently forget or overlook those things when it serves their political purpose. Well, my thing is, if you know the history of the FBI as it pertains to the Black community and our experience specifically, then you wouldn't support it. That's just the way I feel. And again, that's not to say that there aren't good agents. I just laid out a few moments ago the good things that they do. Right. And we certainly want to empower the FBI to continue to do those good things, because that's in the interest of every damn body. But you cannot deny that whether it's the FBI or local DAs or federal prosecutors, these people hold unique and immense amount of power. And it is oftentimes directed towards us in some very unfair and unscrupulous ways. And that has to be reformed and changed. So if you got to take a bull to the China shop approach to it, and that's going to lead to some change, then hey, I'm all for that.
You know what's crazy about it, Shermichael, is, as you pointed out earlier, when it comes to immigration, and it seems like a lot of Black Americans were supporting, just like basically open the doors open and, bring Biden, bring in the people, and we need to help everybody. The same thing holds true with the FBI, man. I sat and watched progressives, Black folks that wanted to be progressives, who were just buddying up to the FBI because they thought it was going to help them stop Trump or something. I don't know what it was. Mm-hmm. I was like, when did we start trusting the FBI? Now, this was under under a different administration. It wasn't Trump, it was Biden. But I remember people were like, well, FBI is good. They were like rooting for the FBI. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. So I know there's something going on. I don't know, maybe a mind control. Is there something in It's
Now, look,
something in the
I root for them to do their core job, prevent domestic terrorist attacks, to get cartels out of here, work with Secret Service on money laundering schemes, white collar crime. I support them to do that.
Right.
And that's where that's where I draw the line. I don't support them doing all the things that, like you talked about, Standard Rock or any of the other litany of things we just talked about. I don't support that. And I think most people in our community wouldn't support that. And I think if you were to talk to regular Black people and not the people here in DC who live in their bougie bubbles, people who have to really think about real shit and how real things impact them, or people who are close to them, when you talk to those people, you're going to get a very different opinion. And that happens to be the majority of people in our community, not the people who I interact with on TV.
Right. Go to, and I know this is getting played out with the barbershops, but go to a barbershop or go to a little league game or go to a cookout.
Hey man, go to the gun range, man. A lot of bros are getting into firearms now. A lot of sisters are getting into firearms now, wanting to protect ourselves. We have a really unique and amazing and beautiful history of gun ownership in this country, in part to sort of protect ourselves immediately after slavery and during Jim Crow. And a lot of Black people are starting to return to that. I know a lot of bros who are starting to get into competitive shooting now, like they're really enriching their knowledge about guns. A lot of bros, I got a couple guys I know now who live in Georgia and Texas who are getting into hunting now. That's not new to us. We knew land better than anybody else in this country. But once we started moving up north, we sort of left those skills behind because there wasn't a need for it anymore. Now you see a lot of us sort of returning to those things. So you don't got to just go to the barbershop. Go to the car meet. Go to the bike meet. A lot of us are riding our motorcycles. I'm a big motorcycle guy. Go hunting. You will find us in all of these different spaces. And those are just regular Black people living their lives, trying to take care of their families, trying to be contributing members to their communities and to the country writ large. And I think sometimes you see a certain type of, I shouldn't say a certain type. Let me rephrase that. You see a Black person of a certain economic caliber, and people just presume that that's representative of everybody in our community. And if that's just numerically not the case, that's a very, 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 very tiny percent of us. That's not the vast majority of us. And you go talk to the vast majority of us, and then you really get perspective on how Black people are thinking about a lot of things. I mean, Tim, I can't tell you, I was just at Target yesterday with my wife and my daughter. We were going to, because my daughter's 4 months now. She's already trying to walk. So we're buying one of the little walker things. You put him in to walk in or whatever. Yeah. And this brother came up to me. He was with his wife and his kids. And he was like, bro, I just wanted to tell you, I know people might give you a lot of shit, but we support you. And he was like, and his wife, she's like, I don't always agree with you. She said, but I got to be honest, you do say a lot of things that makes sense to us. And then she's like, I'm not gonna lie, my husband loves you. I don't always agree, but you do make a lot of sense. And I get that encounter and encounters like that so often, man. You wouldn't believe it if you look at some of the comments I get on social media. And so that, that kind of makes me feel good, because then it's like, I really am in sync with what I think at least a good number of people in our community are feeling and experiencing. And I spend a lot of my time around regular people. I mean, yeah, I do well. I got a company that's doing really well financially, but I don't spend most of my time around journalists. I have no interest in that. I'm hanging with my bros. And yeah, some of my bros are doing well. And some of my bros are just like regular, just working their asses off, trying to just be good, not get themselves in any damn trouble. Right. And we all commingle together. And that's just, that's my core group, man. And I was talking to one of my buddies. My buddy Shay lives down in Georgia. And Shay's a Morehouse brother of mine. And we were talking about some of our bros because we got a trip coming up for my birthday. We're going out of the country. And we're talking about if we're going to bring the wives and all that stuff. And I think we're going to bring all the wives and girlfriends and stuff. And two of the guys, they can't quite make it because they just, regular jobs kind of thing. And he was like, bro, so-and-so can't make it. And I was like, damn, I really want them to come. I was like, just tell them, say whatever they can. And the rest of us could just, put our shit together and just make sure the guys that come on the trip. And so I'm saying that point to say my friends are not just one particular type of group. And you probably would think that's the case if you see me on TV. And I ain't gonna lie, I can understand how people would probably assume that. But no, man, I hang out with brothers who sort of cross the spectrum. Some of us are doing well, some are in the middle, and some of us are like, you want to talk to me like, Sherm, man, I'm trying to do the best I can to stay out of trouble. But I'm doing cool. It's important for me personally to just not lose touch with that side of my identity, that side of our community. That's just important to me. And so I'm not hanging out with journalists. I'm not hanging out with, I just don't, and I don't like to hang out with those kind of people, if I'm being honest with you. I don't go to political events. It's rare that I go to any events. And if I do go to something, most of the times people are like, oh, wow, I'm surprised you even came. And my wife would tell you this, Tim, I might stay for 30 damn minutes. And I'm like, all right, we got to go. I don't want to be here because these are just not the kind of people I enjoy being around, man. So, Tim, I say all that to say, I think it's important when people are on TV and we're talking about issues that are of importance to our community, that we have an objective outlook, but we're also in touch with how people are experiencing and seeing things on the ground. And that doesn't mean, Tim, that there aren't some positions that I'm going to have economically that I'm like, all right, this is really more so in my interest. I kind of do want this. And people can challenge me on that. And I'm open to having that debate. But I also still try to maintain, well, what is also going to be in the best interest of trying to uplift everybody. And that's important, man. It's really important to me because I always imagine if TV goes away and, business falls and crumbles, my hope is that I can still go back to the community and say, well, look, I tried to do some extraordinary things. It didn't quite work out, but I hope at least the community will still support me. And my hope is that that support will still be there. And it's important to me to have that support. I don't look for the support or pat on the back for other people. I say what I say because it's what I believe. Sometimes people agree with it. Sometimes they don't agree with it. But again, I still try to, at the core, advocate for things that are going to be in our best interest. And so to the initial question on the FBI, my support for Kash, that's why I support it, because the agency has a history of being antagonistic to us. And I'm not going to go on TV like some black people who happen to be Democrats say, well, he's abhorrent because it's tied to Trump, and just dismiss and whitewash all the horrible things that this agency has done, not only in the past, but recently.
And if Kash doesn't do what Kash says Kash is going to do, we hold him accountable like we would anybody else.
Hold him accountable. Call him out, because nobody is above reproach.
Perfect. You made it to the end of the video. I appreciate you. Now, Google thinks this next video is going to be perfect for you. It's right up your alley. So click the next video, watch that with me, and let's keep this politics going. You're built for this.